Stage one of the 2023 Tour of Britain in bright sunshine, getting underway from Altrincham to the south of Manchester, and a finish in the heart of Manchester in Deansgate. A peloton of 96 riders featuring a range of different teams, domestic and World Tour. And the headline acts of Wout van Aert and Tom Pidcock, the big favourites for the general classification. But before that, the possibility that there would be 6 consecutive bunch sprints, although the 163.6 kilometres of stage one would potentially prove to be a different script. Considerable amount of climbing as the race wended its way out of Altrincham and up into the Pennines, skirting Manchester, eventually to the east side, heading towards the north of Manchester, and then 2 categorised climbs and numberless uncategorised climbs awaited the peloton as the flag dropped on the outskirts of Altrincham and the initial attacks started to get underway. The attacks would continue from the likes of TDT Unibet and St Piran, as well as Bolton Equities Black Spoke, for around about 4 or 5 kilometres until eventually a group of 5 riders established the first and only breakaway of the day, featuring Uno X's Frederick de Versnes, 2 riders from St Piran, Zeb Kiffin and Jack Rootkin-Gray. TDT Unibet's Harry Tanfield is very familiar with the Tour of Britain and a former winner of the opening stage of the Tour de Yorkshire going back a few years. And they were joined by the initial attacker, or they joined the initial attacker, James Fouché, in the purple of Bolton Equities Black Spoke. And it was Fouché who thought he'd won the only intermediate sprint of the day, only to find out that Harry Tanfield had ghosted up to his left and crossed the line in front of him. So Tanfield taking the intermediate sprint at Hazel Grove, at which there were 10 points available, but no bonus seconds. And then on to the first categorised climb of the day, the Cat 2 Grains Bar, a 2.7 kilometre climb. Fouché reacting to the original acceleration of Zeb Kiffin, who went very early. Fouché onto the wheel of the St Piran man, biding his time and waiting for the moment, the New Zealander from Bolton Equities Black Spoke, when he could come blasting past the rider from St Piran, who couldn't find an initial response and found that the New Zealander on the first of 2 categorised climbs, the Cat 2 Grains Bar, just too strong for him. 2 categorised climbs on the day, but the first of them and the 6 points for the win going emphatically to the New Zealander, James Fouché. And the King of the Mountains competition was the big reward for these riders in this 5-man breakaway who wouldn't be expected to make it all the way to the finish line. But the King of the Mountains jersey very much up for grabs. Second place then for Zeb Kiffin, who was still in the mix in that competition. And 100 or so kilometres remained on the stage thereafter, but Fouché taking the first climb. Then the short but very sharp climb of Ramsbottom Rake, otherwise known as The Rake, just to the north of Manchester, also went the way of James Fouché, taking 10 points here and an unassailable lead in the King of the Mountains competition and celebrating in front of large crowds at the top of the Cat 1 climb, with Zeb Kiffin following him. The 5 then got back together again, just Harry Tanfield holding it up in dramatic fashion as they headed eventually out of the Pennines and dropped down towards Manchester, and one by one those riders started to fall away from the initial 5-man breakaway until there were just 3 and then 2 riders, and those included Zeb Kiffin, who was in the company of Frederick de Versnes. But eventually they too were caught, and the bunch sprint that we had all expected, that had been controlled for the most part by the Ineos Grenadiers and Jumbo-Visma, significantly started to line itself up as they approached Deansgate at something approaching warp speed. Wout van Aert with the race favourite Olaf Koy on his wheel, and Jumbo-Visma with strength in depth at the front. But Sam Bennett's Bora Hansgrohe also getting in the mix. Ryan Mullen stretching things out, the Irish time trialist, looking round to see where Sam Bennett, his protected sprinter, was. Bennett in a perfect place on the wheel of Olaf Koy, the pre-race favourite, as Nathan van Hooydonk took it up inside the final kilometre, waiting to unleash the potential of the best lead-out man you could argue in the world, Wout van Aert. Van Aert with Olaf Koy on his wheel, then Sam Bennett. The cream rising to the top inside the final few hundred metres. And at this point, Wout van Aert started to engage the full lead-out effort. Koy right on his wheel, released by Van Aert. Van Aert then slotting back in front of Bennett. Koy with the win, Van Aert in second place, and Sam Bennett taking third, with Max Canter finishing fast from Movistar to take fourth place. A perfect team performance from Jumbo-Visma, who had controlled the race along with the Ineos Grenadiers all day and delivered in the final kilometre a lead out of perfection, with Wout van Aert, who has GC aspirations, making sure that he finished in second place, which could be significant as the race goes on. So the general classification mirroring the stage results. Coy now leads the Tour of Britain with Wout van Aert in second place and Bennett in third. Ethan Vernon, the best British rider, in fifth place, and last year's winner Gonzalo Serrano is in ninth, just ahead of Rory Townsend.